So this first one is via Johnny Harris, what being a billionaire really looks like. And he's had very interesting videos in the past I've watched from him. So I really wanted to see what this was about.
This is what $100 million looks like. 100 million $1 bills. Look at this. Okay, but watch this. This is what $100 billion looks like. Whoa, that's $100 billion. There's like 19 people on Earth that have this much money.
I think sometimes a lot of people struggle to really contextualize how much money things like a billion is, because a billion is so much money. Like compared to even 100 million, which to me is outrageous money. When you start talking about the billions, it's so far, like it's so much money. I think a lot of people struggle to really understand how much money that is, but yeah.
Oh, and by the way, one of these guys just bought a house right up the road here in Washington, D.C. Remember when we did the piles of cash? This is what $100,000 looked like when we did that visualization. So yeah, we're in a whole different echelon now. I want to show you the lifestyles of people who are worth this much money versus this much money. So we've been talking to experts, interviewing people who work with the ultra wealthy to construct real world scenarios of what these people's lives look like, what kind of influence they have in society, to understand what and who they can buy. First up, let's start with $100 million.
So see what I'm saying? $100 million is outrageous money. So I have an idea that however much money you have, like if you had 100 million in cash, if you invested it properly, you could get a 10% return on your investment. So that 10% return on your investment would, be essentially of 100 million would be 10 million a year. So if you have 100 million, you could live off 10 million a year every year until you die, which is insane. So that's how much money 100 million is. So then if you have a billion, think about it this way, you have $1 billion, that 10% is now 100 million every year. You have 10 billion, that 10% is 1 billion every year. You have 100 billion, that 10% is, so imagine if you have 100 billion, just all invested and all that sort of stuff. There's a world in which you can earn a return of 10 billion. Even let's say 1%, which everyone gets better than a 1% return, especially people that rich that have access to all the resources. Let's just even say it's 1%. So if you had 100 billion, that 1% would be 1 billion every single year. I don't even know that. And that's why when you see the richest men in the world, like their wealth always goes up so quickly, because it just gets to a point you can't outspend how much you earn. It's like if you're earning 1 billion every year from your assets, I don't even know how to spend that. Like if you were to buy a private jet, like a crazy expensive private jet, like the most expensive Gulfstream, it's probably like 100 million. You've still got 900 million left. Then you buy a crazy yacht for 100 million. You still got 800 million left. Then you buy a 20 million house in New York, London, Paris, many other places. You won't go past like 200 million and you still got 600 million left. You buy all the cars, all the Rolls Royces, all the Maybachs, all of that. It's so like, so when I do it that you can't even spend it. Like even if you tried, you could not spend that money unless you're just like, you've lost your mind.
This is Scott. I started a candy company and I grew it over many years, and I eventually sold it to a big giant candy corporation. And because I started the company, I own most of it, and so I got a huge payout from this sale. Between that and a bunch of other investments over the years, I now have a net worth of $100 million. Wow, that's a big number. My primary residence is New York City, where 818 other centimillionaires live. Centimillionaires, it's like 100 millionaires. I'll show you my New York City house in just a second. But first, let's talk about my fortune and how I can spend it. Now, I can't actually spend my fortune right now because all of it is in the stock market. The upside to that is that it grows and grows. My portfolio grows at 10% every year. So what if I just sell
Okay, cool. So he did say the 10% that I said. Yeah, most people at that level can get about, not every time, it's not a perfect science, but let's just say between 6 to 12.
This $10 million return I got this year. This could fund some of my lifestyle. Ugh, but look at all these taxes. All in all, it's like 37% of that $10 million. I guess it still leaves me with 6.3 million bucks to spend. And look, I didn't even have to touch my portfolio. I'm still worth $100 million. Wait, is this video just tax calculations? No. Let's go find a house. My budget for a house is anywhere between $8 and $15 million, which sources told us is common at this level. And even though I live in one of the most expensive and crowded cities on earth, with my budget, I can find a pretty sick house, I think. Okay, let's look around. Boy, there's some...
It's so funny, like London is very similar to New York. I think New York maybe actually has less space in terms of like the housing is a bit smaller. But in New York and London, no one can afford any house. But if you have 100 million net worth, all of a sudden you can actually live in places where you can actually stretch your legs. Most people in these like cities, me included, we all live in places where you can't even stretch your legs. Like there's not enough square footage. And then you get to that level of wealth and you can actually walk around in your house.
Nice options here. How about this one? $8.5 million. This nice apartment in Midtown Manhattan. The listing tells me...
Seeing a house that big in New York is insane to me. Like, I don't know if I've ever actually laid my eyes on a house that big in New York before.
That this is the epitome of refined living. A superior pre-war white glove cooperative. What does that mean? 4 bedrooms, 4 bath. This sun-kissed airy. This sun-kissed airy is one of the crown jewels of the Tony Enclave. What is it? Am I reading like a different language? What is the Tony Enclave? I don't know what any of those words mean, sorry. But I do know that it has a semi-private elevator and is the perfect setting for alfresco entertaining. And me, 100 millionaire, I am super into alfresco entertaining. I mean, this is looking like a pretty great house. It's got this super romantic painting above the mantle. And in addition to my real library, I also get a bathroom that kind of looks like one. By the way, this is only my primary residence. It's not my only home. I've got a couple vacation homes around the country and the world. This one in Miami, which is increasingly a playground for the ultra-rich, and this one in the south of France. And both of these have full-time housekeepers. Let's talk about my vacations. I visit these houses.
I was gonna say, yeah, you would want a Miami home if you're really rich because you can, like, if you buy a yacht, it's really good for yachting. So if you buy a yacht, you can find somewhere to park it. You can actually use it. Most people that are rich, they don't actually live in places where using a yacht would be viable. So some of the really rich ones, they like travel. If you're wondering how I know all this, by the way, I work in the fashion industry. So I work in the luxury sector. So I know all about all this sort of stuff. But unless you're like really rich, so a lot of really rich people, they have like a calendar where they move between each thing. So in the summer, they actually go to places like Monaco or like Miami and stuff. It's like a whole thing.
A couple times a year, but for my other vacations, I'll maybe go to the Hamptons because I love to watch polo. There's this great polo match in July, and I buy a VIP ticket that will cost me only $3,500. Or lately I've been getting into F1, and so I'll go to the race in Monaco. I'll stay at this Hotel Heritage, Hermitage. I'll stay at the Hotel Hermitage, Monte Carlo, for just 22,000 euros a night, which is like $25,000 per night. Okay, let's get to the F1 race.
And the Monaco Grand Prix is underway.
Jeez, no one told me I needed to bring my swimsuit to the F1 race. I'm feeling a little overdressed. Food's great, chef. Great view. Let's get to the race. I'm planning on watching the F1 race from a private yacht. The ticket was $16,000. And look at the benefits here. I get to walk around in the pit, I get to meet the drivers, and I even get VIP tenders.
Not those tenders.
Not that kind of tender. Just a fancy boat that brings me out to the yacht. Anyway, something's bothering me. Remember when I showed you I could sell off the returns that I made this year from my stocks and still come out with millions of dollars of cash to spend? Well, I didn't really like having to sell off all those returns and then have to pay like over 30% in taxes. Me and everyone else you'll see in this video don't like to sell our portfolio, our assets, to get cash. I'm
going to guess. I think I know who's going. I know that a lot of rich people, what they do to avoid paying tax is they get a loan, because it's like, by the time you're worth 100 million, it's probably very easy for banks to verify your wealth. And by the time you're worth 100 million, you also don't bank with normal banks. So if you bank with like the private banks, the high net worth banks, they normally have like crazy benefits, like being able to easily get loans, using your own like net worth as like collateral against the loans. And that way on your books, it looks like you took a loan. So it looks like you're always in the negative. So then, you're not going to pay tax basically because you took a loan. So you're always in a negative. That's kind of what a lot of rich people do. But then I still need to think about, I'm not rich, so I haven't thought about this a lot. But I always wonder, like, what happens when you die then? Like, does that debt just disappear? What happens to it? Maybe he might talk about it in this video.
Because that triggers all of these taxes. It gives us less power in the companies we own. Instead, we like to get cash through a bunch of other ways, using our vast fortune. My favorite trick is to go to the bank and to ask for a loan. Wait, what? I'm a super rich guy. Why do I need a loan?
There we go.
Well, let me show you. The bank will loan me a lot of money if I put my huge investment portfolio up for collateral, meaning they can come after it if I don't pay the loan back or if I default or something. Okay, how much can I get in a loan? Well, according to the bank UBS, I could borrow up to 85% of the value of my investment portfolio, which remember is
I want to know, what's the interest rate on that loan? That's going to be very important. Hopefully he talks about it.
$100 million. So I could potentially get a loan for $85 million. Another bank, Merrill Lynch, says that they will give at least 50% of the value of your portfolio. But regardless, we're talking tens of millions of dollars that I can borrow and spend. And guess what? I pay zero taxes on this money because it's not income. It's technically debt. Okay, wait, but it's a loan. So I'm accruing interest.
There we go.
Right? This isn't free money. I'm going to have to pay it back someday and likely have to pay it back with post-tax money. So it's not free money. What's the deal here? Why am I doing this? Well, according to a lot of good reporting from the Wall Street Journal, people making $100 million or more can get quoted on an interest rate as low as 0.87%.
0.87%. Oh my God. Okay, it's worth it. Because think about it. Your net worth is 100 million. Your interest rate is as low as 0.87%, but you get a 10% return on your investment. So you're always in the green. You're always going to make more money than the interest that you pay back, like significantly more money. That's crazy. 0.87% is outrageous.
Super low. In reality, today, under these conditions and with my net worth, let's just be really conservative and say that my interest rate on the loan is more like 5.9%. It's a lot higher than 1%. But watch what happens. This allows me to not have to touch my investment portfolio. I don't have to take out that $10 million of stocks and pay a bunch of tax.
Yeah, so he's always got more money because it's like, yeah, if you borrowed 85 million and you're only paying 5.9% interest on 85 million, but you're making 10% a year on 100 million, well, you can easily afford to pay that interest, like easily, and just keep borrowing and paying off the interest and keep borrowing because you're making more money. And then by the end of it, you might have borrowed, well, you would always be worth more money than you borrow, basically, so long as like something doesn't go around bad, like an economic crash or something.
And that is growing at 10% a year, way more than the interest on this loan. Now
exactly
watch what happens over time. This is the value of that $10 million left in my portfolio, and this is how much I owe on the loan I took out. That's a nice looking graph. My wealth is growing way faster than the interest on my loan is accruing. So this tax-free debt thing is awesome, and it's one way that I will turn my net worth into spendable cash without having to sell off any of my stocks in my portfolio. Okay, no more tax math for now. I want to go buy some more stuff. It's time to talk about private jets and yachts. Sadly, I can't afford the private jet that I want.
Yeah, 100 million is not going to get you, well, it can get you a lot of private jet, especially if you, once again, I only know this because I work in the luxury sector, and like people be like, how do you know all this stuff? It's really weird, like growing up lower middle class and then being in a luxury space where I kind of know all these things about a lot of these things that I'll never be able to afford. But anyway, let's go on the Gulfstream website. There are other manufacturers that make good famous private jets. Gulfstream is just the biggest one. There's like Bombardier, there's so many I could get into, but they have all these different sizes, right? So they have the 800, which is the big one. Let me actually check how many nautical miles it does. Yes, it does 8,200 nautical miles. So you could almost go everywhere. You could almost go everywhere without stopping. Let me Google. Okay. So London to Australia nautical miles is 9,200 nautical miles. So that's the only place. Like if you want to go direct from London to Australia, you can't. You have to stop somewhere. But most private jets, to be honest, I think unless, even if I was a billionaire, like unless I was actually using the private jet for commercial use, it makes no sense to incur like the cost of like something this big with the fuel cost and the maintenance cost, because there's like a calculation that essentially whatever the cost of a private jet is, you're going to spend double that cost in maintenance, crew salaries, fuel costs, pilot salaries over a 10-year duration. So that's insane. So yeah, a G800, you definitely cannot afford that if your net worth is 100 million, because this plane alone is close to 100 million. Let me check Gulfstream G800 price. Yeah, so a Gulfstream G800 apparently starts at 72 to 75 million. My knowledge is that no one ever buys it at the starting price. So let's just say in reality, if you're buying a new Gulfstream, most people are buying it around that 80 something, 90 something million mark. So almost 100 million. Some people are going to buy them used. Let's say used could be range depending on how, long it's been used for. Let's say between a 60 to 70 or 75 million range. So yeah, even you just can't afford any of that. What I think, unless you have, once again, a commercial use for your plane, the gold standard is something like a G600. A G600, let me see how many nautical miles it does. 6,600 nautical miles. So I just realized it's not on the screen. Okay, so it does 6,600 nautical miles. You can basically go anywhere you need to be, because like once again, London to Australia is like 9,000 something nautical miles. So you could go everywhere on the planet with just one stop. That's like the gold standard. Because if you're on a private jet, you get to choose how long the stop is, really. Once they change the fuel, refuel, look at a few things, you're back off. So it doesn't really take that much time off your journey. I think no matter how rich you are, you shouldn't ever get a private jet that's bigger than this, unless there's just a corporate use for it. I don't think there's any point in doing that. And even this is like really expensive. Like a Gulfstream G600, let's see. So a Gulfstream G600 new is like about 60 million. You still can't afford that if your net worth is 100 million. But yeah, just wanted to provide some context about the private jets and all that stuff to show you how expensive they really are. They're super expensive.
Womp, but this doesn't mean I don't fly private. These days, I can easily just book a jet like this one. It can take me from New York to Miami, and it only costs me $15,000. I can get from LA to Australia for $200,000 on this private jet. $200,000 seems like a lot, but let's compare it to the median net worth of a US household, which is $192,000. The median net worth of a household, not a person, a household. Spending $200,000 on this flight to Australia feels the same for me as
that flight is one way, by the way. Like chartering private jets, or just anything to do with private jet, is so expensive. 200K one way.
Median household spending $384 for this ticket. Pretty doable for a flight to Australia. Now I can get a better deal on these private flights if I pre-purchase a jet card like this. I fill it up with prepaid private jet hours. Prices range from $5,000 to $7,000 per hour for a small private jet and up to $20,000 an hour for a bigger, longer range jet. Maybe someday I'll own my own private jet, but my budget of $10 million doesn't really get me the fancy one that I want. I'll opt to charter for now. What I can afford is a fairly large staff to run my life. I have 18 full-time staff members, and that's a real number of staff for people of this net worth from a Morgan Stanley report.
Yeah, I can imagine if you're worth 100 million, you would have definitely like a chef, you would have like a maid to clean the house, you would definitely have a driver. Those are like the main ones. Maybe like a gardener. One of my old bosses one time, he had a gardener that used to take care of his dogs as well and take his dogs on walks. What else would you possibly need? Who are all these other staff members I'm seeing on the screen? I mean, everyone needs a everyone needs a doctor at some point. It's not like you have a personal doctor or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's all you would need, to be honest.
I've got a personal driver, I've got a shopper, I've got a butler, a chef, a laundry person.
Okay, you don't need a shopper. I think so because I work in the fashion industry, I have my own taste in clothing and fashion already. I'm never going to need a shopper. It doesn't matter how much I know all the brands, I know what they release, I know all the designers at all the brands, which almost no one knows unless you work in the industry. Some people just think of like Louis Vuitton, Dior. They don't even know that there's people that are the reason why people are buying these clothes, like the designers behind the clothing. So I wouldn't need something like a personal shopper. I think I have my own taste. I don't need that. But a lot of rich people, they're like rich. The problem with being rich from birth is that you don't have enough time to build taste. Like when you're poor, like me, over time you're like, I really want that. If I like made more money, I would get that and I'll get that. And then you kind of grow out of it over time. You're like, thank goodness I couldn't afford it. That would have been terrible. So then over time, you just build a taste level that I think people that are born rich just don't have. That's why they need stylists and personal shoppers and all this sort of stuff.
I'm super into security, so I've got a head of security and a bunch of security guards. I have a personal handler who sets up all the logistics of stuff I want to do. Like I want to go yacht shopping this weekend. They're handling all of it. Oh, that's him now. Hey, Brad. Yeah, for the yacht show this weekend, can you make sure I get some VIP tenders? No, the chicken ones. Oh, and I almost forgot, my most important staff members are the financial and legal experts who find the most clever ways to reduce how much taxes I have to pay. Which, my wealth manager, Jeff, keeps selling off all my stocks at a loss, and we're like losing money. Jeff, what are you doing back there?
Don't worry, Scott. This is called a wash sale and I know what I'm doing. You get back to yacht shopping.
Loss harvesting, wash sale. I don't understand it all. Jeff does though. Anyway, back to yacht shopping. Wow, look at these yachts. I'm actually sad to discover that I'm on the lower end of ultra wealth.
What is a wash sale? Wait, let me just Google that quickly. A wash sale is a US tax. Yeah, this is probably why I don't know where it is. Being based in the UK. A US tax rule violation where an investor sells a security at a loss and acquires the same or a substantially identical security within a 61-day window, 30 days before or after the sale date. The primary consequence is that the realized loss cannot be used to offset capital gains or income for the current tax year. Interesting. It was enforced by the IRS to prevent investors from claiming artificial tax losses while effectively maintaining their investment position. Okay, but what happens if you just get it outside of that 61-day window? I guess there's a very specific reason why they've specified within a 61-day window, because that was like the issue they were having most of the time. But that's interesting. I've never heard of that.
My yacht is actually not that fancy. It's not a super yacht, that's for sure. It looks more like this. It costs a little over $1 million. I might splurge and get this guy. Costs more like $6 million, but this is...
Yeah, for $1 million, you can't really get like a substantial yacht, to be honest. I think if you're going to spend $1 million, instead of getting a yacht, you should get like a really fun speedboat or something like that.
Still pretty entry level. Because at this point, yes, I've got loads of money. I can buy and travel and live how I want. But what separates me from the big dogs who we're about to see is yachts and private jets, but also influence in society. I do some donating. I donate a bunch of money.
This video is so good. It's like you get to a certain point where you have so much money. To me personally, I think once you pass 10 million, like in net worth, you're basically there. Where you have so much money that you can, within reason, do everything you want. The only thing that changes, like the more money you make, okay, instead of flying business class, you fly first class, and then you start flying private, and then you own your own private jet. It's all the same. It's all luxury. It's all traveling in like excessive comfort, living like a VIP every time you travel. And then in terms of like boats, your yachts or boats get bigger. I'm personally not the biggest yachting person. I don't think if I was rich, I'd ever own a yacht, to be honest. A private jet, I probably would, because I travel a lot. Maybe that's because of my job, because I'm a journalist. But then if I made that much money, would I make it being a journalist? Probably not. That's probably why I'm not going to be rich ever. But yeah, so just get to a point, I think, of wealth where you just have to decide, where does it end? Because if it never ends, if you're constantly just trying to consume more and more and more, I think it just never ends, and that's a bit tiring.
to politics. I gave $900,000 to a PAC that supports the candidates that I hope will win. I also belong to the invite-only Aman Club, which I had to pay a $200,000 initiation fee for. My membership fee is $15,000 a year, and I get to rub shoulders with people way richer than me, like Bill Gates, and even the Kardashians show up every once in a while. But this isn't real influence. I'm kind of paying for access. It's nothing like we're gonna see once we cross the $1 billion mark. $1 billion. Forbes says that there's about
1 billion outrageous
kind of
amount of money. Like I said, if you're getting a 10% annual return on your money, it's 100 million every year, and that compounds. So that 100 million the first time is now, if your portfolio is now worth 1.1 billion, then that compounds into 110 million, and it just keeps compounding. Insane amounts of money. Like, it's not necessary for anyone to have that much money. It just isn't.
Hi, my name is Javier. I was a moderately wealthy guy for a while, but I randomly wrote a $200,000 check to a couple of young guys in Silicon Valley who had a startup idea. They gave me 4% equity in their company, and then their company blew up and is now worth $80 billion. After some dilution, my $200,000 check is now worth $1 billion. That's my net worth. So how do I get liquid cash to spend from my vast fortune?
Loan.
Well, I don't want to sell any of my stake in the tech company I invested in because I have voting rights. I can control how it is. In fact, like Scott, I don't want to sell any of my portfolio for cash. Instead, I will generate money other ways. I'll go back to the old debt trick that we saw with Scott.
Risky. So what makes this risky though, even though it's really smart in terms of not paying taxes, is that if all your money is invested into that company and the company crashes, that means all your net worth is gone, but then you still have this loan. Then you have to file for bankruptcy because obviously you can't afford to pay for the loan. And the crazy thing about that is if you file for bankruptcy, they repossess everything you own, right? And like try to sell it to pay off the debt. Now, I always wonder, once again, I'm not rich enough to look into these things. If I was, I would have the answer to these. And if you're watching and you have the answer, definitely let me know. But is there a way to separate some of the assets from your personal self so that when you file for bankruptcy, like your house or your cars or whatever, they're in like the name of a different business, so they're not allowed to actually use it as like collateral? I wonder how that works.
And if I get a loan that's 2% of my vast portfolio, I'm looking at $20 million of tax-free cash, all without having to touch my portfolio, which continues to grow in the market at 10% a year. That $20 million that I didn't have to take out of my portfolio is just in the market, is growing nice and fast. And look, after 5 years, my portfolio has grown way more than the interest on this loan. I can easily pay back the loan right now and still have extra to spare. Okay, so let's talk houses. Where do I live? Of course, New York City, where there's more billionaires than anywhere else in the world. I live up on the Upper East Side. Look at this beautiful home. 6 bedrooms, 17,000 square feet Manhattan apartment. It cost me $57.5.
New York is a really strange city. Like I always compare it to London because obviously I was born in London, grew up in London. It's so strange. So like New York is really dirty. Like disgustingly dirty. There's a lot of rats, there's like people's trash cans on the streets and stuff like that. But it's so fun though. New York is so much fun. I think even more fun than London. So London is definitely cleaner, but there's always events going on in New York. There's always stuff happening, it seems, every time I'm there. But my oh my, is it expensive. Like New York, I feel like my money just disappears. Like New York is insane in terms of like you have to make good money there to survive.
$1 million. This was actually 2 huge multi-million-dollar houses that they combined into one, just cause. It's got a pool with my favorite inspirational quotes on the wall, a basketball court on the roof, but this is not my only home. It is one of 7 that I own, including my home in Aspen, in Lake Garda, Dubai, St. Bart's, and of course, downtown Paris. And look, I finally own a private jet. Yes, no more chartering or...
Yeah, if your net worth is a billion, you can afford basically any private jet you want.
Prepaid flight cards. I've got my own private jet and it is sick. Look at this thing.
Yeah, that's a Bombardier Global 7500. That's like a really expensive private jet. Let me Google the price of that. I think they actually just launched, I know way too much about private jets. I think they just launched a new one. Let me check. So the Bombardier 7500 is 73 million to 81 million. So let's just call that 90 to 100. But if I'm not mistaken, they just launched the 8000, which apparently is supposed to be one of the fastest private jets in the world, if not the fastest private jet. They were talking about it being like, yeah, the supersonic. So it has a top speed of Mach 0.95, and it's the world's fastest business jet and fastest civil aircraft since the Concorde, which is insane. So this is how much I know about private jets. And this private jet literally just came out like not that long ago. Oh, they have a range map to show you like wherever you live. So I'm in London. So in London, if I lived in London with the Bombardier Global 8000, I can reach everywhere on the map apart from Sydney in one flight, basically, which is insane. But once again, like I said, planes this big, they're very unnecessary. You don't need this unless it's for corporate reasons. If you're an individual, I don't care how rich you are, you don't need a plane that big. You just don't. Like, you don't have a family of 25. Like, you don't need a plane that big.
Cost me $75 million, and I have to pay $3 million a year just to maintain it. Like, I have to pay $135,000 just to store it in a hangar. I pay $600,000 a year on fuel and $45,000 just...
I feel like a Bombardier 7500 costs more than $3 million a year on maintenance. Like, between hangar fees, pilots, fuel, especially if you're flying a lot, that just the fuel alone, air hostess, like food that you put in planes normally is like way more expensive. It's like marked up. The people that, you know, sell food for planes is crazy marked up. Same thing with yachts, to be fair. So no, I feel like you'd spend more than $3 million a year.
Like basic maintenance. Oh, and I have a full-time pilot and crew. I spend over $700,000 just to keep them retained as my full-time flight attendants. And I finally can buy a respectable yacht. Like, look at this one. It's 131 feet long. It's got a pool and a hot tub on the deck. It can carry 11 guests and 9 crew members. And like my PJ, I have to pay a full-time crew to run this thing year-round, even though I only use it a few times a year. My vacations look pretty similar to Scott's. A lot of expensive VIP access, but just a little more elevated. Like, I paid $3 million to watch the Super Bowl in this suite with Taylor Swift and a bunch of other rich people. The difference between me and Scott is I get invited to stuff that I don't even have to pay for because we're kind of all a little bit post money at this point. Like the
Yeah, so sometimes you don't even need to be rich to have that kind of access, but I know what he's talking about. For you to be worth $1 billion, you're probably so influential in whatever field of work you're in that people will just start inviting you to stuff because your friends are probably going to be the people that organize the Formula One Grand Prix, or you're going to be friends with the CEO of a yacht company, so they just invite you to the yacht event. They're like, yeah, take this yacht for a spin for the week. That's just kind of what happens when you're that rich. But I think on my level, as someone that's like working class, making like working class wages, you still have access. Like, I have access to things that people that pay money, like for example, I work in the fashion industry. There are VIP customers. There are customers that spend $100,000 a year on like Dior, and they would never get into a Dior show because there are richer people that spend millions a year on Dior. So those are the ones that get in the show. But I get into the Dior show because I'm fashion press. So even without being rich, there are things that you can have access to if you're influential in your industry and you're important to the ecosystem, where you can go to those things for free. And yeah, you don't have to pay. Because I travel a lot for my work, being a journalist, and I've been able to see the world, and I don't make that much money. But I just have access to these things. And sometimes people book me on like business class. It's weird because like you don't make money, but then when a luxury brand is flying you somewhere to cover something, it's a luxury brand, so they have to kind of keep that mystique. So of course they put you on business class. I've stayed in hotels like the Kimpton in Paris. It's insane. Like the St. Regis in Florence. So there are levels to it, but you can have this kind of access without being a billionaire for sure.
Yacht show, they have an exclusive opening day. Scott was paying $2,200 for a ticket, but I'm one of the 200 people that they just invited to the VIP experience. And in fact, where Scott's vacations were about lavish, opulent...
Even another thing I just remembered, right? So Currently, I'm a Spotify VIP because I do some stuff for Spotify, meaning when you're a Spotify VIP, at least in my case, I don't know what it is like in other countries, I have access to go to any concert in the UK. So all I do, I have a contact at Spotify. If Kendrick Lamar comes to London, which he did, I reach out to them. I ask them for VIP tickets. They send it. I go to the concert VIP. So it's kind of, there's a way to, there is a way. You don't have to be a billionaire. There's like ways to get this kind of access without being rich, but you kind of just have to be a bit more savvy, which I think, once again, when you're rich, I feel like when you're brought up rich, you learn at a young age that you can buy your way out of everything and you can buy your way into anything that you want. So someone who's born rich, their brain's first way of thinking is, can I buy my way into this thing? Whereas someone like me that doesn't have a lot of money, my brain goes, how do I use charisma and just like competence to find my way into the same rooms, right? So then someone like me, if I was rich, I have all that information plus the money. So yeah, because I see a lot of people that make YouTube videos and they're not very experienced, or they're like quite young. They're like 16 making videos about stuff like this. So they don't actually realize how many things that you don't have to be rich to do.
Hotels and experiences, I have kind of a different vibe. I care mostly about privacy and security. In fact, the places I stay look a lot more like this from the street. Unassuming, not drawing any attention. But behind these walls, I've got everything I need for my vacations.
Yeah, a lot of houses in Paris are like that, where the way the street is designed is so that every house kind of looks the same, but behind one of the big gates is a whole like mansion. I really love how it's designed. I'm very sure though, like criminals in Paris probably are starting to figure out where the mansions are. I mean, you can check the maps the same way that he did here, but it's just kind of cool that that's how it works.
Security team flew in a few days earlier to secure the property, and then I arrive with my butler, my chef, even my personal doctor is on site. I've got a dog walker who I pay to just hang out with my dog, and of course my luxury travel coordinator who just zipped into town to connect with the brands she's been communicating with. They're planning to come to my villa to set up my own personal store in one of the mini bedrooms so that I can browse the latest fashion without leaving my villa. By the way, that's a real example from our reporting. A family who did this during one of their vacations and ended up spending $1.5 million on their little in-home designer store during their vacation. In fact, I want to super clarify that all of these examples are based on real reporting, real examples from our interviews with people who work with the ultra rich. Many of them don't want to appear and be quoted in this video, but we're grateful that they let us in on some of these lifestyle details of how people live and travel at this wealth level. Anyway, I'm Javier, and at this point, it's hard to know what to spend my money on that Scott can't. Like, we can both buy a $91,000 shirt, which sales tax alone on this puppy is like $8 grand, $9 million painting. There's a few things that are out of reach for Scott that I can buy, maybe like...
And this is what I was saying, like, okay, cool, 1 billion is like significantly more than 100 million, but 100 million or higher, you just have so much money. I don't think your life really improves between like anything higher than what your net worth already is, apart from if you're just the kind of person that's never satisfied and you always have to be in a bigger place. I personally am not like that.
This nearly $3 million bottle of whiskey. What I can do at this level is pay for hyper exclusive experiences, like paying my favorite band, the Eagles, to fly in and play me a show. I'll pay millions of dollars for this, and in fact, they've negotiated only playing Hotel California one time, but it was totally worth it. And yes, that $6 million private concert is a real example too. Anyway, let's go back to security, because now that I'm a billionaire, I'm a little more well-known, and my security team has grown. But I'm also starting to get a little more paranoid, thinking about how I'm planning for something apocalyptic. We rich people think about this a lot. What if we lose it all? My vast wealth is...
Oh yeah, all these rich people that have all these like crazy ass bunkers and stuff. I think that's what he's going to talk about. Let's see.
In the market, in the economy. And if order breaks down, it could be worth nothing. So I'm going to invest in some backup plans. A bunch of land in upstate New York. And in fact, I'm even working on a bunker. I love bunkers. This thing's got food storage, a decontamination shower, a high-tech air filtration system, 4 bedrooms, a hair salon, a shooting range. Listen, I'm not a prepper, but you know, just in case, and I've got the money to do it, why wouldn't I? I'm worth $1 billion. So at this point, I kind of have an army of tax professionals optimizing my wealth so I can pay as few taxes as possible. And Congress just passed some legislation that's really helping me out on this. At this level, I start to get weird and creative with my money. Maybe I'll buy a hotel chain. Or maybe I'll invest in bubbles. No, not those kind of bubbles. Bubbles is the...
Once again, I think at that level of wealth, it's just so much money. I think it just becomes like, what do you even do with it? It's like, you can afford, if you're worth $1 billion, you can afford everything on the planet. And it's just to the point, it's just like, what do you buy? It's like, you just start investing in more shit because you can't spend that money. Like, not $1 billion, but even like, we're just talking about the returns, which is 100 million. You can't spend it every single year. Like, once you buy the houses and properties once, you're not buying those properties again. Once you buy the private jet once, you don't need to buy that for about a 10 to 15 to 20 years, depending how well your maintenance is. So it just gets to a point, it's like, I actually don't have anything to do with my money anymore. I'm living the most lavish lifestyle and it's not making a dent. Let's just start investing in all kinds of shit.
Name of my thoroughbred horse that I bought for $3 million. I paid millions of dollars, and then I had to, of course, build a home and a bunch of stables for Bubbles, and I had to like get a trainer and feed and care and medical attention. It's a lot of money, but it's a business expense. And Bubbles is a depreciating asset on my balance sheet. I'm supposed to try to make a profit off of Bubbles, but really I'm doing it because on race day, I love showing up to watch him race. Get to hang out with my friends, spend some time at the track, throw a big party, and watch Bubbles race. Come on, boy, come on. Bubbles. Oh, he lost again. And yes, I'm losing a lot of money on Bubbles, but honestly, I'm not that stressed because this is more of a hobby, and all of these losses I can write off to lower my tax bill. I'm actually doing this same kind of hobby thing on a much bigger scale. I bought an NBA team. I'm able to write these players off as depreciating assets, even though the team is growing and making money. All of this helps my tax rate be lower than the players who play for me, and even lower than the guy serving beer in the stands. ProPublica did a great analysis.
See, this is exactly what I was talking about when you have this much money. It's just like, what do you spend it on? It's just, you just start buying basketball teams and you start buying football teams and it just becomes, what is your passion? And then you just start buying up shit.
On that, by the way. But yeah, anyway, all of this is legal. Like, I'm not breaking any rules. And honestly, it's really fun. And look, I have the best seats in the house. Oh, and by the way, I still pay a lot of taxes. My businesses pay corporate taxes and income taxes and payroll taxes and property taxes and sales taxes. I contribute massively in dollar terms, and my businesses generate huge amounts of tax revenue and jobs, and I took a risk in building my wealth, and when I sell or die, the government takes another giant cut. I'm paying plenty. And in fact, I'm paying so much that I'm gonna use some of my influence to try to change that. I've got my eye on a Senate candidate. I've contributed $20 million to his campaign to get him reelected, and he won. Yes! It's a few months later, and Congress is working on a bill. It could have big ramifications for my business and therefore my net worth. And so I'm gonna call in my favor to the senator who I donated so much money to help re-elect. I need him to insert 8 words into this massive bill to allow my business to qualify for a huge deduction. He does it last second, and I just saved hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. 20 million bucks to get this guy elected in exchange for hundreds of millions of dollars in savings? That sounds like a good investment. Thanks, Congress. My financial advisors have been telling me that it's time for me to not just be a rich person, but to become a philanthropist, to give away my money and to save some taxes in the process. How about, let's see, what can I give away? Well, I've got this really nice art collection. An appraiser said that it was worth
Philanthropy is a very interesting thing because it's like, giving money away is good if the money is going to a good cause. But then it's like, if you're worth $1 billion, 10% return on your investment, 100 million. If you go the loan route, you can loan up to 85% of your net worth. So you can literally loan a tax-free 800 million. It's just, and then you give away 2 million when you're going to make that money back like way more than that every single year. I don't know. It's just like, it's kind of, you do the philanthropy to kind of give yourself brownie points, but you're not really, because it's such a small percentage of your money, you don't feel it. So it's almost like, I question the intention and the fact it's also a tax write-off.
$30 million. I'm going to donate this, but I'm not going to donate it to like a public gallery. I'm going to donate it to my own family's private nonprofit foundation. And
even worse, donating money to your own private foundation. Oh, something I need to clarify, because this confuses people a lot. Just because like foundations or charities or whatever are not for profit does not mean that, it just means they don't make a profit. But the money still goes somewhere. And if you're high up in these organizations, there's people that work for UNICEF and like all these things, and they make loads of money. Like the people at the top. It's just like the organization itself is not for profit. So I think people always have this thing where, oh, these organizations are not for profit, but people that work for these, like, if you know anyone, I mean, I know quite a lot of people that have worked in like those NGOs like UNICEF and stuff. They make insane amounts of money. So it's just funny when he was like, yeah, I'm going to donate money to my own private foundation.
As long as I make this art accessible to the public, I can write off the $130 million from my taxes over several years. Okay, so I have to make all this art accessible to get the tax write-off. What counts as accessible? Luckily, the IRS isn't super specific, so I've decided to open up the art room to the public, but just in kind of random 2-hour slots that you need a lottery to get an access to. There'll be only guided tours on random Wednesdays, no regular hours, no self-guided tours. That's accessible, right? I'm taking the tax write-off. That work, guys?
Nice approach.
Yes. And yes, that is a real example of philanthropy really being vanity projects with no public benefit. Thanks again to ProPublica.
Yeah, exactly what I was saying earlier.
Okay, moving on. Now, there are billionaires who give to real causes that benefit real people, who give away a large amount of their fortune to actually change the world for the better. But it's also very common for billionaires to use foundations and philanthropy as tax shelters and vanity projects. And the IRS doesn't really come down on these people very often. Oh, I just got an email saying I'm going to Switzerland. Because I donated to the presidential campaign, the president is assigning me to be the ambassador to Switzerland. And I know the president said that he wouldn't be appointing his donors to these types of roles, but here I am. Seems like a lot of us donors are getting appointed. This is great. Let's get the jet ready to go to Switzerland. So you can see that my fortune at this point buys me anything I want, but it's actually starting to be more and more about buying influence in society and politics. But this is just the beginning. Let's see what happens when we 100x this.
Yeah.
Okay, things are about
so
to get kinda
100
nuts
billion.
because we're about to.
This will be interesting because I can't even mentally picture the kind of lifestyle that a centi-billionaire lives. It's just so outrageous. Like that amount of money is just so outrageous. It's like, I can't even fathom it. Let's just watch. I just can't even fathom.
100x this pile to go from 1 billion to $100 billion. There's less than 20 people who have this much net worth or more. They're almost all Americans who started technology companies. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, has anywhere from 4 to 5 times this much, depending on the day. And at this point, there's no way I can convince you how much money this is. Like, you would have to combine the incomes of over 7.5 million Americans toiling away, earning the median salary of $63,000 a year. 7.5 million people.
That's crazy. But I like how that puts into focus how much money these guys really have.
Earning the amount of money controlled by one guy. Hi, my name is Bradley. I founded a technology company decades ago, and it is now one of the most valuable companies on earth. I still run it actively, and most of my $100 billion fortune is in the form of a huge amount of stock in this company. How do I even think about where to live? I could go the direction of Indian billionaire Mukesh Ambani and build my own personal 27-story skyscraper, complete with a hanging garden and a 6th-floor garage where I can store 168 cars. Or I could collect a portfolio of trophy homes all over the world. I'll buy this one in Florida for $173 million. It's got 33 bedrooms and 39 bathrooms. That is a lot of toilets.
This is when it becomes like, I understand if you're rich, you can afford like a 30 plus bedroom house, but it's like, isn't that just stressful? It's like, how can you even remember where all the bedrooms? How do you? It's just, that's stressful. That's too much stress. And that's the thing. It's like, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should buy it.
I'll buy a spot in London, but I'll make sure to buy all the properties around it, so I've got a lot of privacy. That one cost me $202 million. I'll grab a bunch of property along this coastline in Malibu.
Yeah, I guess if you're that rich, yeah, you could just buy all the houses, neighboring houses, just for privacy. That's so excessive.
I'll buy this private golf course next to my 19,000 square foot mansion, even though I don't really play golf. And I'll even pay $86 million for a Zen temple in Japan, because I'm super into Japan. Let's add to the list buying this entire island of Lanai, Hawaii. All in all, my big portfolio of houses around the world adds up to about $2 billion worth of homes. But if I'm like Larry Ellison, whose homes all of those I just mentioned.
And once again, 2 billion is so much money, but it doesn't make a dent. Because when someone is worth 100 billion, 10% return on investment, that means they're making 10 billion back every year. Let's say it's a 5% return on investment, which would be like bad performance. 5% return on investment every year from their net worth, that's a 5 billion amount of money coming in every year. So you're telling me that after you've bought all those islands, all those buildings, you've only spent, not only, but you know what I mean, relatively, you've only spent 2 billion. You have 3 billion left to spend, and then the next year you're going to get another 5 billion. It's like, that's the thing about this level of wealth. It's just, that's how crazy it is.
Are. This isn't even 1% of my net worth. But I don't want to just buy homes. Maybe I want to buy a social media company.
Yeah, that's Elon
I'm really
Musk.
into influence right now, and influencing the media is a great way to influence society. And this is where I can take the loan thing that we talked about earlier to a whole new level. Yes, I could sell a bunch of my stock to get cash to buy this social media company. Or I can do what Elon Musk did and take out a giant loan, billions of dollars, that I don't have to pay taxes on, that is based on my vast fortune. Musk was about to take out a loan of $12.5 billion, but then ended up taking about half that to buy Twitter. And this is what's wild, is the loan thing, at this level, I can plan to just do this forever. I never have to pay off these loans. I never have to
Okay,
sell.
cool. I think he's going to talk about it. I really want to know what happens when you die. Like, where does this money go? Like, what happens to the debt?
Off any of my stock. I could keep paying down the interest so it doesn't compound, but even if I don't, my fortune grows way faster than this debt accrues. And the real benefit of this happens when I get close to the end of my life. It's been decades. I have all these loans. They've grown, accrued interest. My fortune has grown way faster. And at the end of my life, I could sell a bunch of my portfolio, get a bunch of cash, and pay off all my loans before I die, so I don't leave my children saddled with all my loans. But I don't want to do that, because I would have to pay a huge amount of taxes if I did. And if you haven't noticed, I don't like taxes. My goal now, as I get close to the end of my life, is to set my family up to inherit my vast fortune in the most advantageous way possible. So I max out the gifting exemption. There's like $14 million I can do there, but that's like a drop in the bucket. I'll set up some trusts that technically remove control of my wealth and pays out a certain amount to the named beneficiaries, like my children and grandchildren, over a period of time, potentially forever. But watch this. My portfolio is a vast fortune that is mostly loaded with unrealized gains, meaning this is all money that has grown in the market. I haven't paid taxes on it yet because I haven't taken it out. The moment I take it out, I have to pay taxes. But what I can do is when I die, I can give this giant fortune to my daughter, let's say. And the moment I give it to her, boom, the clock resets.
No, how? Okay, we're going to need some clarification on how that's possible. How is the debt forgiven? What happened to the inheritance tax, first of all? No. I feel like we need more clarification on that. I need to understand how that works.
Inherits that fortune, and suddenly it's as if she has zero gains. Sell this
I don't
entire
believe
portfolio on day one and pay no taxes.
Nah.
The unrealized, untaxed gains disappear, never to be taxed. And yes, there is a big estate tax that I have to pay when I die, but my army of wealth managers have figured out a way to buy an insurance policy that will pay that tax for me. Anyway, I'm not dead yet. Let's talk about yachts. Because at this point, at $100 billion, I can get the top of the line. Look at this 600-foot long...
Once again, this is why I say, like, being rich, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should do it. It's like, this yacht is so big, it's not even fun. I just don't know how you could have fun being on a yacht that's so big. It's like it would take you forever to go between the rooms. It's not homely. It's not, I don't find that nice. I don't find that enjoyable to be on a boat that's just that massive. It's just not intimate. It's not, yeah, it's personally not my vibe. I don't, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should. Like, yeah, I don't see why you would want a boat that big. It's hard to park. You can't dock that boat in many places. You can only dock it in like the massive marinas. Like, it's just, I don't get it.
$600 million yacht. This thing has a crew of 80 people. It can cross the Atlantic without refueling. It's got a pool, a helipad, a movie theater, a golf training room, because, you know, I gotta practice my swing when I'm out in the Atlantic. I pay my crew super well. Many of my crew stay on board my yacht for years. Oh, and did I mention that it's not just the yacht? I also have this little shadow barge that follows my yacht around when we're out to sea. It carries extra fuel so we can be out on the water longer. It also keeps some of my car collection. Oh, what's that? You're burning to hear about my car collection? I have 2,000 cars. This giant collection is worth around $200 million.
Once again, with the cars, obviously, if you're a car enthusiast, you're a car enthusiast. But like, do you hire someone to make sure that, I guess you can afford it, like to make sure that the engines are running and everything's in tip-top condition, and to clean the cars and to make sure it's not rusting, and to, like, that's just stressful. Just because you can afford it, once again, doesn't mean you should do it. That's stressful.
Kind of my hobby, another real example from this billionaire. And just when I thought I had the top of the line, there's something else I got my eye on. This super yacht airship crossover that's straight out of Star Trek. I want this thing. Especially because the article says that, quote, crossovers can be oodles of fun when done right. I want oodles of fun. My super yacht's starting to look boring because I have to stick to the sea. But with this crossover, I can go anywhere because it literally turns into a blimp and goes onto land, and it costs about $1 billion. And yes, it's got all the bells and whistles, a pool, a sauna, a gym, a helipad, tenders, and a nice big garage for my cars. And yeah, we gotta talk about my private jet. Oh, sorry, private jets. I have 3 of them, and they're all huge. My favorite one is this one. This is the AJ350. It's got a cabin that's 167 feet long. Over 3,000 square feet of floor space on this sucker. I bought this thing for $360 million, and I spent another
22 hours non-stop flying on that plane is insane. 22 hours non-stop flying. That's crazy. Once again, it's just too big. The plane is just too big. It's like, what do you need? How long do you spend in that? It just gets to a point where it's just like, what's the point?
$100 million just to renovate the interior because I wanted a spa on board. I mean, totally worth it, right? Oh, and on a more grave note, I had to make a deal with my pilot that in case of the apocalypse, which I think about a lot, I'll let him and his family come with me to my compound. Like if we have to escape, I need to guarantee that I have a pilot to fly me away in case like the mob comes knocking. Where will I fly? Oh, I've got some options. I've got bunkers all over the place. Some of them have airstrips, so I can just fly right to them. My favorite one is in New Zealand, where a lot of us are burying bunkers.
So many rich billionaires, especially American billionaires, have bunkers in New Zealand. It is quite crazy, actually.
This thing is buried underground. It's got a pantry, a gun room, a surgery station. This thing only cost me $8 million to build. But that's not including the couple $1 million I had to invest in New Zealand for several years to qualify for an investor visa. So they'll like let me into their airspace. My other bunkers include huge pieces of land in Hawaii, where I have a huge full-time staff, including a person who raises my Wagyu cattle. Just like my buddy, Mark Z, he's got one too. We love Wagyu and hydrofoils. When I say and hydrofoils, cut to him on the hydrofoil out in the, we got this, Mark. Okay, but I'm not all doom and gloom apocalyptic. It's just a backup plan. I have hobbies too, but my hobbies have turned into kind of reality bending projects. Like, I want to go to space.
I feel super connected to love.
I want to create my own libertarian nation in the South Pacific. I've got the money to do it. I have like more money than a lot of nations. Or I could throw my money at wild, innovative ideas, like making human brains talk to computers or finding ways for humans to live forever. My security team is now huge, dozens and dozens of professionals, many of them former Navy SEALs. And it's hitting me that At this level, I have so much money I can actually make a huge impact in the world. I have the ability to give away over $19 billion of my wealth, no strings attached, to help change the lives of underrepresented people like Jeff Bezos' ex-wife did. I could put billions of dollars into eradicating infectious diseases and focusing on improving maternal and child health funding like Bill and Melinda Gates have done.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Gates Foundation, they did that.
Lot of power that I have to affect what public health initiatives get done. Or I could pour my philanthropic money into foundations that get me tax benefits and serve my own ventures and are completely controlled by me and my family. I could do either. And my level of influence is not just in the philanthropic causes I can fund. I also rub shoulders with the most influential decision makers in the world. Did I mention that as a part of my real estate portfolio, I've got this huge swath of beach in Florida where I've created an enclave for the rich. It's right next to the president's Florida residence, and it's where I make sure that I rub shoulders with the right people. This election cycle, I'm going to spend almost $300 million on getting my favorite candidate elected to be president. That seems like a lot. Is that legal? Actually, yes. Look, I have a front row seat to the inauguration, and the president is giving me the job I've always wanted, which is taking a chainsaw to the federal government.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Wow, well that was quite the journey. If there's one thing I've learned on my journey from $100 million to $100 billion.
Okay, that was a cool video. Some very interesting things mentioned there and clarified. I still need clarification, please, if you're watching this, about how does that loan disappear? Like how does the loan just disappear when the person dies and then their kids take over the wealth? I'd need to understand. I don't get how that works. I don't think he clarified that properly. But yeah, that's that video. Thank you very much for watching.